Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and thanks for watching. Well, they've said goodbye for the calendar year. The goodbye was given to the voters of the state by the Pennsylvania legislature. What did they do? That and it's International Credit Union Month. All coming up after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, believe this or not, the Pennsylvania legislature went out on July 4. They are gone now for the balance of the calendar year. They have spent maybe 9 or 10 days in about 6 months, or will have spent in session. What did they do in 9 days? Joining me, as often is the case, is Robert Swift, a Capitol News reporter for Times Shamrock. Do I got that right?
That's correct.
Boy, I always want to say Scranton Times and your other papers.
Yeah, Citizens Voice in Wilkes-Barre, Pottsville Republican Herald, Hazleton, paper, and also in Shamokin.
You got that Northeast covered,
That's right, the Northeast region.
Well, as always, Robert, thanks for coming on. All right, look, there had lots of things that they were going to try to do this year. We're going to get into a little bit of that. But first of all, the big news is, on the eve of the legislature leaving, unrelatedly, preliminary hearings for several of the folks who've been indicted, the 12 folks who've been indicted in the infamous Bonusgate scandal. Bring us an update on that.
During this preliminary hearing, they had 2 of those 12 defendants basically turned into prosecution witnesses. One of them is Michael Manzo, the former chief of staff to House Majority Leader Bill DeWeese. And during testimony, when they brought him on the stand, he said he believed DeWeese, allegedly knew about that the bonuses that were paid to legislative staffers in 2006 were in return for political work, which would be illegal. And this is sort of being treated as a bombshell allegation.
Right.
And certainly, caused some of those things that caused a stir in the Capitol, as you could believe.
And the other thing that was reported was that he was aware of the political activities done in the caucus to chuck a third-party candidate off the ballot in 2004, so that they were doing other kinds of, Ralph Nader was a candidate, that they were doing political work. So, in other words, this now, and as we talk, the majority leader has holding a press conference. We do not know as we tape this where all that goes, but we'll obviously find out. But this is the first serious allegation, made by someone who worked for him. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mike Manzo not only worked for him, Mike Manzo, was Bill DeWeese's detail guy.
Yeah.
And knew as much as anyone about the workings of the House Democratic Caucus. So this is really how far, this would go in terms of individuals affected. It's very unclear. It comes at a time when Bill DeWeese is fighting for his political life.
Yep.
And for election.
In his election and in
his caucus, because there already have been members calling for him to step down. And now this comes really on the last day of their working day of the session. This came down.
Now the other thing that I want to ask you is, and have you been hearing and have you done any stories about the complaints by Democrats that the Attorney General is indicted only Democrats, that they're investigating Republicans, but he's put off anything until after the election? But then you have this going to be a huge story around the state, that these folks who, in their preliminary hearings, it's pretty big news if someone says the Democratic leader was involved in wrongdoing, and I think that's, in effect, what his former chief of staff said. Have you heard additional complaints from Democrats about this?
This comes at a time when they control the chamber by 1 seat. Tom Corbett, the Attorney General, had to come under criticism for what people called, he made a self-imposed deadline that he would not have any more grand jury presentments after October 1st, and then he said the grand jury in September didn't have enough time to hear more evidence. So that there have been speculation that some Republican activities were the focus of the probe, and now you have, these charges, are not that Mr. Manzo made in at the preliminary hearing weren't legally charges. They are out in the public sphere right now.
Yeah, but they could potentially have a political effect, and that's your point, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, look, we're going to come back in a moment. I want to get into, well, what did the legislature do? What didn't they do? We'll do that and more following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Pennsylvania Medical Society. Doctors and patients, preserve the relationship. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, we're doing a quick update on the activities of the Pennsylvania legislature as they say goodbye to this session. In session about 9 or 10 days in 6 months. I'll leave it go at that. I'm talking with Robert Swift, from veteran journalist with the Times Shamrock newspapers. All right, Robert, we talked a little bit about the implications of Bonus Gate. Let's go now to, let's talk about health care. Governor Rendell, big agenda. He says that there were 800,000 Pennsylvanians not covered. He wanted to try to cover them. Then he dropped the number to about 220,000. Then he was willing to take 120,000. Where does all this stand?
The Senate just kept on nickel and diming the figure lower of who would be covered. And well, two things have happened. One, the sharp drop-off in state revenues gave them a reason to be wary of it, plus the current economic turmoil as far as taking on new programs. So that entered into the picture as this fall session got underway. But the Senate Republicans have been reluctant to expand these programs anyway. They were interested in trying to extend the insurance subsidy for the doctors' malpractice to keep them in the state.
And is that off the table as well?
Both issues are off the table. What productive negotiations broke down.
But let's talk. I mean, you hit on a big subject. It's a subject we often talk about during budget year. Will there be a budget increase? How much? Will their taxes be accompanied? Both Senate appropriation chairs, Senator Fumo, for obvious reasons, he's under indictment. Senator Armstrong, the Republican who's leaving on his own, retiring on his own, have predicted huge budget deficits at the end of this fiscal year. I mean, substantial $1 billion in deficits. Am I correct about that?
We're talking almost like over $2 billion. Now, I mean, this is a huge figure to throw out there. And the last time you saw anything like it was in the 1991, when, of course, the $1 billion shortfall of the budget was much smaller then.
That's correct.
So we have to always keep that in mind when we talk about these shortfalls. Now, these two men are on their way out. And also we're going to have a prolonged period when the legislature won't be in session. So if things continue to worsen the economy, at this point it's going to be in the governor's court, because he would be the one, the agency that's done to review their budget requests. But if we get into a situation next June where we get into a massive shortfall, we're looking into a very long summer.
So we have a long budget cycle, plus we typically, during the last two recessions, have had tax hikes.
We've had tax hikes. We had one of the things that Governor Rendell's first year was to try to get. He inherited a deficit when he came into office. That's the third one. Then
I forgot about that one. So you have that one. You have one during Casey's tenure during the '90 recession, and then you had one during Thornburg during 82 recession, 83 tax hike. So now we're not going to predict the tax hike here for you folks out there. Don't get too nervous about that. But obviously, with billions of dollars in shortfall, that means cut government programs and/or raise taxes, right?
And it also raises the question, the state, just undertook a lot of bonding issues with some of the energy programs, where the state sells bonds to investors. Now, I don't know what the investment market is going to be for that coming up, so that's going to be perhaps that issue against some of the things that have been done in recent years. Now, once again, Pennsylvania is in better shape than many of the other states. Our jobless rate has been below the national average. In the past, it used to be above. In the past, we were always in there longer in these recessions. So we're not as dire as, say, we're not running out of money like California and Massachusetts.
And Rendell has also put a freeze on hiring, I think. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he's doing some other cost-cutting devices. But
which he's done a lot of during this. He always likes to say no one gives him credit for cost-cutting.
Yeah, okay, we'll give him credit for reducing, trying to keep spending for the agencies of state government. Let's separate that. All right, final word. The energy, it's complicated. I may get into that next week, with some other guests. But talk about that. That was another major priority for Governor Rendell. Where does that stand?
Right now, the big issue, the idea that everyone's worried about of, when the electric rate caps come off for utilities at the start of 2010, 2011, of trying to provide some way to cushion the shock for consumers, that's off. Now, I didn't think that could be off till June. I'm not sure they had to do it. But what they are, it looks like agreement is being reached or has been reached on some more efforts to help consumers save on electricity, and also to help sort of more regulations on utilities about how they buy power. Now, these may not be as far-reaching as Governor Rendell wanted. They are compromises, but they still are. Groundwork should be laid now to help cushion that shock.
Again, I misled you all. One more topic. Reform. We heard all about it over and over and over again. They had all kinds of possibilities out there, constitutional convention, gift on no ban gifts for legislators. They have to report them no ban. Maybe maybe more limitations on campaign finances. What happened to this reform agenda in the Pennsylvania legislature?
This is the big irony. We started this session in early 2007. We had this big class of freshman lawmakers who was going to make changes, and all this reform talk, and we are ending it with this bonus gate rearing its head. We are in a situation where we had what we got was an open records law, and we had some changes in the way how late they stay in at night, and a few other changes. But basic reform bills that could have been done, putting salaries on online, actually banning bonuses, that didn't get accomplished.
Yeah. All right, great update. All right, International Credit Union, stay with us, and we'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, it's International Credit Union Month. Our friends from the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association are here. We have the chairman of the board of the PA Credit Union Association, Diana Roberts. She's here often. And Jim McCormack, he's here often. He's the president and CEO. All right, we got the titles done. Let's go to the real stuff, right, Diana? We want to get to the real stuff. All right, International Credit Union Month, what is it, and why is it of interest to folks?
Well, it's been celebrated for many, many years. Jim, do you want to take over it all on this?
Yeah, it's been celebrated for many, many years, and we think it's rather significant. We're usually on this program talking about financial literacy, credit card fraud. And since October is Credit Union Month, especially with the economic crisis going on, I think it's important to talk about what credit unions are and we're the not-for-profit alternative to the for-profit banking industry. And we have the same government insurance up to $250,000. We're local, we're safe and sound.
Is there on the philosophy side, banks, credit unions, you're not for profit, most of them are for profit, but now you all made, I don't want to diverge too much, but you all make loans, but I haven't heard anything about credit unions having any financial problems. Is there something different that you do?
It does probably go back to our structure. As credit unions and not-for-profit cooperatives, we are owned by our members, and because of that, we're very conservative. We did not make any of the risky investments that many of our counterparts did, and we hold on to our loans for the most part. We don't sell them off. We keep them. The deposits that we get in from our savers are turned around and made loans to our borrowers.
So in other words, you're not a lot of the paper for mortgages, which often get sold by banks upward to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or somebody. You are saying you hold on to a good bit of yours. Is that right?
Yeah, the vast majority of credit unions do hold on to their own mortgage paper. We were not involved in subprime lending, and as Diana said, our structure is completely different. I think it's important to note, Terry, it's a structure in our business model. We're not for profit, so there is not that reward out there for credit unions to go chasing investments.
Yeah. Well, look, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you do that sort of summarize what we've for our viewers what we've talked about over the years. I mean, you have Credit Union Better Choice, which is an important program you all do with the State Treasurer's Office. Where do we stand with that? First of all, explain what it is, and then where do we stand with it?
I'll let you explain.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a little bit more.
She's the chairman, right?
She's the chairman. She's my boss.
She gets to say who goes first.
That's
Go ahead.
right. That's right. The Credit Union Better Choice was something with the State Treasurer's Office something that came together when Bob Casey was State Treasurer. And in the last 18 months, we've made over $4 million of short-term loans. So it's an answer to predatory lending, and we've saved Pennsylvania consumers over $3 million. And we have over about 72 credit unions participating in this short-term lending program.
How is this predatory? I mean, we've done shows on it for a while. You folks have been gracious enough. You've come in here. We've tried to warn people and tell them to be very cautious about going out and taking these loans out and then paying what I think we would all agree are usurious. That's a word that comes to mind, right? Usurious interest. In general, how is the whole economy doing with are there fewer predatory loans, do you think? Are you seeing more out in the community itself, or how does that all stand?
Well, in my credit union, we haven't really seen that much difference. But going back to the Better Choice loans, ours is different in a lot of ways because what we do when we make the loan is we also have a little bit of a forced savings.
Yeah.
So they have to put money in a savings account, and so they're learning some better habits. So what we try and do is turn it around and make them good
That's
borrowers.
a great idea. So in other words, you're not just going to say, okay, we're going to give you the money. You're trying to change your behaviors. Now, in some cases, a lot of these folks don't, they just don't have a lot of money, and they're living from paycheck to paycheck. But get rid of debt and then try to save. I mean, get rid of debt has to be, you're shaking your head.
Yes, get rid of debt, and we want to make them full-fledged, and they become full-fledged members of the credit union community, and they have access then to banking.
Yeah. All right, this is International Credit Union Month. We're going through some of the things that the credit unions have done. We've talked about a lot of these on PA Newsmakers. They're a very popular segment. We call it Financial Literacy Update. We'll be back in a few moments.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Penn Future, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. It's International Credit Union Month. Okay, one of the things we want credit crunch. You're hearing a lot about the credit crunch. Where's the money? Can money be borrowed? Diana, talk about this. This is a very important subject. Take it.
Well, credit unions do have money to lend. We've heard that there are some borrowers that are having trouble getting money for cars, for other borrowing purposes, and credit unions are out there ready to lend to those people. We are a safe harbor. We used, as we talked before a little earlier, we haven't been making a lot of those risky investments. So,
and on the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the credit union or the deposit changed from 100 to 250,000. That's you folks. You're covered there too.
The same as the FDIC, although we're insured by the National Credit
That's
Union
right.
Administration.
But did they increase that as well?
Federally insured.
That was part of the package.
It is. Just the
it was
same.
only 450 pages. I only read summaries of it. I didn't get into all the details of it. So, Jim, then the bigger point here that I think needs to be made is that the deposits are safe. You have money to lend. Is it just to individuals, or do businesses become, and do you help them, particularly small businesses that will soon maybe be feeling this credit
An
crunch?
increasing number of credit unions, Terry, are getting involved in small business and small business services, and not just lending, but cash flow and also deposit taking. So we have a number of credit unions now that have opened their doors to small business. And they've been very, very successful, and the businesses have been happy with them.
Yeah. I mean, you would think that would be sort of logical. There are a lot of small businesses that are subchapter S, you know, and
that's their target market.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's sort of the engine of small growth, at least as, you know, this political scientist understanding of the economic situation. But let me go, before we get out of here, to talk to you about, you know, about the punditry that's now going on about where we should go in the economy. There's an argument about back to basics. What is that? How would you, what is translation? Translate that to me in terms that our viewers would understand.
Well, it has been said that the financial industry should go back to basics, but our credit unions are saying we haven't strayed from the basics.
Yeah.
We're still doing the same thing we did many years ago, maybe a little more technically savvy, but you know, we can still make the loans, and we're there for our members, and haven't changed a bit in that.
Yeah, and what that translates into is that you don't have any investments in Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, or you don't. Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. Both the National Credit Union Administration, which regulates federal credit unions, the State Department of Banking regulates state credit unions. Our regulations are far more stricter and conservative when it comes to outside investments, and we're happy for that. And that's sort of like back to basics.
Yeah. And increasingly, I think, you know, when we talk about diversified portfolios, we're talking about making sure that, you know, the financial ones, and in all candor, a lot of the banks are certainly okay. I mean, and we've talked about on a number of occasions, and one of the things that, you know, works well is that people have choices, and, you know, you're great to come on. We're particularly happy as we end this segment, and I'll let you go, is these financial literacy updates are very popular, and it's a very valuable service. Thanks for being on. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well and you stay.